Oh, please help me welcome Dr. Amy Bender. We're kind of diving right in today because so much content coming your way. Can you just start for us, Dr. Bender? How did you become so passionate about sleep? Where did this stem from?
Well, I actually ended up going to my aunt's sleep lab, who was a sleep technologist at the time. And she showed me all the electrodes on the scalp and on the eyes, and looking at respiration rate and leg movements. And I was just very, very fascinated. And I was kind of looking for a new career pathway, anyhow. So I basically called all the sleep labs that I could in my area, ended up volunteering at one. And the director of that sleep lab, Keith Knittel, was on the hiring committee to bring Greg Belenke to the Sleep and Performance Research Center. And so there was like this serendipitous way of me landing a job as a sleep technologist at the Sleep and Performance Research Center at Washington State University. So I was this main sleep technologist, and it was fascinating doing the sleep deprivation research. But I wanted to be able to create studies on my own. So I ended up getting my master's and PhD in experimental psychology, focusing on sleep EEG, and kind of did a postdoc in Calgary with Canadian Olympic team athletes and optimizing their sleep. And then made my way to Calgary Counseling Center, where I was the leader of the research department. And then currently I'm director of clinical sleep science at Cerebra, which really, I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it. It's a sleep technology company. We're really trying to change the way that we help people sleep. So yeah, I guess that's
Yeah,
my
you've been
journey into
busy.
sleep.
Thank you. That was amazing. And do you find, I mean, you're so far into this journey. Are you always a little baffled how much like the normal population doesn't really understand how important sleep is?
Oh, I am. I mean, just so I recently presented at the National Sleep Meeting just this weekend, and I did a poster on depression as it relates to people meeting the physical activity guidelines and the sleep guidelines. And it was a shocker to me. 60% of the sample, and we're looking at 32,000 people across the world from 127 different countries. So, very international sample. And 60% of the sample didn't meet the sleep recommendations of 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night. And over
Wow.
70% didn't meet the physical activity guidelines of 150 minutes per week. So it's still shocking to me. And there's just so much more work that we need to do.
Well, and that's why I love, thank you that you're so willing to come on and talk about this, because that's one of the things that I continue to try to dive in with my clients is that I think when we truly understand the why behind something, it becomes more motivating to work on it versus just knowing it's good for us. We just should get enough sleep. So excited to have you. Um, okay, so I just wanted to dive into, let's go this route because I have a lot of clients who are trying to lose weight. Like, if the sleep part isn't there, do you think we're going to constantly be fighting an uphill battle?
I think so. I mean, there's been a lot of research to back this. And for example, there was a meta analysis looking at sleep deprivation and the impact on calorie consumption. And they found that there was about a 400 calorie increase in consumption with sleep deprivation,
Wow.
varying degrees of sleep deprivation. So 400 calories per day. I mean, that's a huge amount. And
Yeah.
it's related to, there's a lot of factors going on, but one of the main factors is our hormone regulation. So leptin, that feeling of being full, decreases with sleep deprivation, and ghrelin, the kind of feeling of being hungry, increases when you are sleep deprived. So physiologically, you are craving more foods because of this hormone imbalance. And also, that leads to less fruit and vegetable consumption they find in the research, more snacking at night. So I think, yes, sleep should be an important part of a weight loss plan. I mean, optimizing sleep. And there's actually been some research to show, as it relates to body composition as well, that when they add in a sleep optimization component, so just, basic sleep hygiene, the things we all know we should do, there's actually more lean muscle mass and less fat mass in this particular group when they compared it to just the normal weight training group. So having a sleep component plus weight training helps improve body composition.
So you feel like it truly could be like a missing ingredient that, again, if not taken care of, because I think there's a lot of people who don't even think about that. And then even going back to your depression or anxiety or any of those factors, because I think all of this just plays into
Mhm.
somebody's health journey. You can't just separate it. So I have a lot of clients too who, again, a lot of anxiety going on, a lot of depression and seasonal and all of that, depending,
Mhm.
but sleep, just really starting to notice that sleep is. So, can you go into the anxiety and the depression part of that?
Yes. Well, what we're finding in our work is that both short and long sleep duration is associated with higher levels of depression.
Mm.
And when we looked at kind of the sleep duration across the board, we actually found that 7.5 hours of sleep was associated with the lowest depression scores. So, and it's easier said than done. I mean, and there's a bi-directional relationship as well. So it's not just about getting sleep and you're good. It's, when you have mental health problems, that impacts your ability to get good sleep. So there
Yeah.
is a bi-directional relationship, which I think makes it more complicated. But in general, with intervention studies looking at sleep optimization and exercise in people with mental health problems, they do see improvements with some of these lifestyle factors. So, I talked about sleep duration, which is an important component of optimal sleep health, but we also have sleep quality as well. And so I could tell someone to be in bed for 10 hours, but if they have an underlying sleep disorder where they stop breathing during the night, maybe have obstructive sleep apnea, um, they're just not going to get the sleep that they need, the sleep quality that they need. So
Right.
sleep quality is also important, and we want to address those underlying sleep disorders, or not sleep with the lights on, for example. That could impact sleep quality. There's certain environmental factors, so that's important to consider, as well as sleep timing. So aligning your circadian rhythm, your biology with the timing of your sleep is going to be a good way to optimize sleep health as well. So those three key factors: duration, quality, and timing.
So, quick question on the timing, because I feel like I've been hearing that a lot lately. And how does somebody figure that out for themselves?
It's a good question. I'd say the first thing is, what do you gravitate towards when you have free days? So on the weekend, are you staying up a lot later? Are you sleeping in a lot later? And, that's probably a sign that you're more of an evening type in those instances. And it can be challenging because we do have work, we have school where we have to get up early, so we
Right.
can't, there's only a certain amount of people who can actually create their own schedule. So getting lots of light in the morning is going to help set your rhythms for the day. Blocking light at night is going to help you feel more tired at night. So there's certain tricks that we can do to shift our circadian rhythms to the optimal time. But yeah, number one, what do you do on your free days? That's kind of a sign of your chronotype, or your preference for being a night owl or an early bird. Are you waking up with an alarm every day? That's probably a sign that you're maybe not getting as much sleep as you need. If you're having to have that alarm wake you up, the best thing would be to wake up naturally if you could,
Yeah.
and maybe have an emergency alarm, but try and wake up before that alarm. Um, and just trying to keep a consistent sleep schedule on your free days and your work days, etc., really helps train the body to know when you should be awake and when you should be asleep, so it can create more energy during the day if you have more of that consistent sleep schedule. And we do find in the research, so when there is a big mismatch between work days and free days in an individual, so let's say I get up at 6 a.m. Monday through Friday to go to work, I go to bed at 10:30 p.m., let's say, versus on the weekends where I stay up till 1 a.m. and I sleep in till 10 a.m.
Yeah.
This large mismatch is called social jet lag. So it's like you're um, you're changing your schedule. It's like you're flying to Hawaii, or you're flying to Hawaii on the weekend because your schedule is a lot later depending on where you're at. And it can cause lots of problems. So we see mood issues being related to this. So the more inconsistent your wake time and your bedtime is, the more potential mood disturbances that we see. We see poor school performance in college students who have lots of social jet lag, where they're varying their schedules a lot on the weekend.
Yeah.
And just overall performance, I think, can suffer as well. So it's something to try and strive for, is to keep that schedule as consistent as possible. And I mean, within reason, typically I say no more than 90 minutes sleeping in on the weekend. And that's kind of beyond that amount, we start to see some of those problems occurring. So, yeah, trying to keep your sleep schedule as consistent as possible is important for the timing of sleep.
And that's where I always feel so sorry for the nurses that I used to work with, or that I get as clients. Often they're the ones who are switching back and forth between night shifts and day, can never get on that nice rhythm. And I just feel like, man, what a hard profession on your body in general. And then also from a sleep standpoint. But
Definitely, definitely. There are like, the ideal scenario would be for these night shift workers to stay up all night on even on their days off, but obviously that is not realistic.
yeah.
So actually what we see in the research is for shift workers to delay their sleep even on the weekends, or sorry, on their days off.
Mhm.
So have more of that night owl type of schedule. So if you can, even on your days off, maybe go to bed at midnight or 1 and try and sleep in later. That's going to be ideal, because then you're not in as much of a compromised
Yeah.
position where you're completely switching back and
Right.
forth. It's more, you're more of that evening type, even on your days off, so that when that night shift comes, it's not as hard of a transition than if you were to kind of wake up at 6 a.m. on your days off type of scenario.
Right. Thank you. I love this. I feel like you seem really realistic in that you get that people have their lives and their professions, but like, here's the way that we can tweak it the best that we can to still fit life. Um, I have a question, and this is straight from my husband's mouth this morning. He's like, make sure you ask her when, let's say it's a weekend, or let's even say it's a workday week, that's that time where we wake up naturally, but we go, man, I'm really tired. And we're maybe skipping a workout if we go back to sleep. Is that sleep time actually that beneficial, or is it actually more beneficial just to wake up and get going?
Well, I would say trying to wake up consistently at that sleep time is really important, more so than the bedtime. So if you're going to
Hmm.
vary it, you want to stick to a consistent wake up time, because hormones are being released, cortisol is being released according to when you naturally wake up. So keeping that consistent wake up time is going to be really important. And potentially adding in a nap is kind of the way I lean towards. So if I have a poor night's sleep, and we can talk about kind of my wake up in the middle of the night routine and what I do. But if I have a poor night's sleep, I'm going to try and make that wake time consistent, and then add in a nap, which is going to help me get me through the day.
No, I love this advice. And let's do talk about, I have plenty of people who wake up and go, should I just lie in bed until I fall back asleep? Or what is your recommendation on that?
So I have a wake up routine, and the general rule is you don't want to be in your bed for more than 20 minutes. And we don't want to stare at the clock too, so I don't want it to be like 20 minutes on the dot. But
Yeah.
that's why I have this routine that takes about 20 minutes. And so I know if I've gotten through this routine that I'm going to get up out of bed, do a relaxing activity, and only return to bed when I'm tired again. So my routine is, I have small children. So my youngest is 3. So luckily he's getting past the waking up all the
Oh,
time.
yes.
Um,
Oh,
but I will get disruptions during the middle of the night, and sometimes it's hard to fall back to sleep. So what I do is I do a breathing technique. So I'll do the 4-7-8 breathing technique, where you breathe in for 4 seconds, hold your breath for 7 seconds, and breathe out for 8 seconds. The important thing here is that you're breathing out longer than you're breathing in, and that helps activate the parasympathetic nervous system, our relaxation system. So that's a good starting point.
okay.
The second thing I do is a cognitive technique. So when we fall asleep, we actually start visualizing objects and different imagine. And some of you may have experienced this. If you wake up after initially falling asleep, it's like, oh wow, I was kind of imagining different shapes. So what I do is I use the cognitive shuffle. So I think of a word such as, let's say, bedtime, and you imagine all the objects that you can that start with the first letter. So B, ball, baby, bus, banana, bag. You just start imagining all these objects. And when you can't think of any more, you move on to the next letter in your word. So E, eagle, egg, ear. And you just keep going. And by the time you get to the end of the word, hopefully you'll be sound asleep. And this
Yeah.
is a way to get your mind off of being awake. It's kind of like occupying your mind gently, but also kind of simulating what you do when you fall asleep. So it's a really fabulous technique. But
Yeah.
there are times where I try that and I'm still wide awake. So the best thing is to get up out of bed, do a relaxing activity. So read a book, stay off your electronics, take a bath, for example, and then only return back to bed when you're sleepy. And so there have been times where I'm not sleepy. It's 4 a.m. I've been reading a book, and I'll just kind of get up for the day, and I'll purposefully schedule a short 20-minute nap. I'll actually avoid caffeine because I don't want that, you know, anxious and caffeine impacting my ability to fall asleep early that night. So
Yeah.
when I have a poor night's sleep, I'll kind of substitute a nap for that caffeine intake. And it really kind of breaks you out of that cycle and hopefully makes it easier for you to fall asleep that night. And just being aware that the nap, we want it to be short, less than 30 minutes, so that you're not
Mm.
getting into those deeper stages of sleep. And we want the timing of the nap to be, between noon and 4 p.m. We don't want it too close to bedtime, because that's like eating a snack before dinner. You don't want to you don't want to sleep too close to bedtime.
Okay, I'm having like a little anxiety just like thinking back, you mentioned you have small kids, and mine are now 9 and 11. So we are in good sleep mode. But thinking back, and this is the way I relate to my clients and how I did feel when you are that sleepy, and then to like commit to the fact that I'm not going to do caffeine, and and maybe I'll get that 20-minute nap or not. Like you're still saying it's just good to commit to maybe one brutal day, because at the end of it, you'll end up in better days overall, as it, what, how I'm reading you, versus like it's kind of just knowing that day's going to be really hard.
Well, I think it depends on the situation. So if you have a newborn, go for the caffeine, like go for it.
Interesting. Okay.
Because I mean, it's going to be happening day in, day out. I'm talking about more the situation where it's kind of 2 times per week, or
Yeah.
not very often that this is going to happen. I purposefully avoid the caffeine. Now for me, I have 3 kids, 8, 6, and 3. When my I mean and being and I had my I was pregnant with my oldest when I was defending my master's degree, and I had both kids during my PhD,
Oh my
and then I
gosh.
had my third child during the postdoc. So I was drinking the caffeine like crazy. I mean, being in graduate school. And it wasn't until my youngest was 9 months old, that I said, you know what, I'm going to get off the caffeine. Um, and personally, I am a decaf proponent. So I love coffee. I love the ritual, but primarily I drink decaf or half calf because I know it impacts my ability to get good quality sleep at night. I think I'm a very slow metabolizer, and so it
Mhm.
depends on how you metabolize caffeine as well. But that's something for people to try if you haven't tried getting off caffeine, and really see, does it make a difference in your overall sleep quality? And for me, it made a huge difference. I was, sleeping through the night. Um, I was, unless my son was waking me up, but I just felt so much better without the caffeine. So that is something people could try. And I substitute with decaf, so I still get the good flavor and the ritual. And
The
um,
handhold,
yes,
yes. So with that though, could somebody technically feel like they're sleeping throughout the night, but just not, their brain not allowing them to go into those deeper cycles of sleep because caffeine's blocking that? So they wouldn't even know necessarily?
there was actually a recent study on this where they gave energy drinks to teenagers at dinner time.
Mm.
And I think it was around 75 milligrams, so around a cup of coffee or so. It wasn't a too crazy of a caffeine content.
Right.
Um, and the teens, they actually fell asleep normal to when they weren't drinking the energy drink. They seemed to not wake up more than they usually did during the night. But when they looked at their sleep on a deep sleep level, so looking at the stages of sleep, they found that they got about a 20% reduction in slow wave sleep, so that deepest stage of sleep, despite the teens not reporting a single change within their
Yeah.
sleep. So they were thinking they were sleeping fine, but on a fine grain level, when we look at the deep sleep and the slow wave activity, they actually had a big reduction. Now, usually these experiments, they leading into them, they're usually not on caffeine. So I think this is probably a more exacerbated effect.
Sure.
So this would be someone who's not drinking caffeine and then they have an energy drink at dinner. It's going to show a reduction. I think there's a lot more to be explored with habitual caffeine drinkers. So if you normally have 1 cup of coffee every single day, I think you can kind of adapt to that on a
Sure.
certain level. But it's worth exploring what
Yeah.
happens without the caffeine.
How much validity do you put into, because a lot of our watches nowadays says that it goes, it shows you your deep sleep, your light sleep, how much you're up. Do you trust those enough if somebody's looking at it as like more of a baseline, or they're not like following it off the end of the earth, but they're just using it as a glimpse? Do you think it's worth that, or do you not think it works that well?
I think it could be worth it. So just so you know, though, these devices aren't valid when it comes to sleep stages. So, deep sleep, REM sleep, light sleep. There was a recent study looking at 7 different wearable devices, and they found that they were really good at estimating sleep duration. But when it came to the sleep stages, they were not effective at all. However, I think if you're using these day in and day out and you're trying different interventions, that the devices are reliably bad, I guess if you want to put it that way. So they're
Yeah.
reliable. You just can't take the information as far as the sleep stages go
Yeah.
as truth. But I feel like, for example, if I'm going off caffeine and I notice an increase in deep sleep, let's say by 20 minutes or so, I may not like really, okay, I got to a 20-minute increase. I'm not sure if that's accurate, but it's trending in the right
Yes,
direction.
but it changed.
Yes. So I think it
Yeah.
can be helpful for some of those people who are wearing it day in and day out and make certain changes to their lifestyle to see, does this make an impact on my sleep quality?
Oh, thank you. That answer was perfect because I mean, our dashboards show like REM sleep. It does break down the phases. So it's good to know they're equally, it's,
Yes.
yes.
So I have a Garmin Forerunner that I primarily use for training and running.
Yeah.
And for myself, though, I actually take it off at night. I do not wear it at night because the Garmin is actually one of the poorest when it comes
Mm.
to validity with sleep stages. So um, there is certainly a big area for improvement in this area. And at my current role at Cerebra, we're actually working on developing a wearable device that looks at EEG activity, so monitoring the brain waves. Because these devices, it's a proxy for sleep. They're on the ring, they're on the wrist, but it's not looking at the brainwave activity where sleep is occurring. So
Yeah.
for us, we're really interested in how can we make these devices more accurate, and also pairing it with an app which can promote behavior change as well, which I think is an important element to all of this. Is the device helping you create behavior change when it
Right.
comes to your sleep habits? Or is the device potentially causing more anxiety? And so that could be a reason not to use the device. If you wake up, you look at it, and it's saying, you got 5% REM sleep or something.
Right.
So the way that you use the device is important. And really, I would tell people to, before you go straight to the app to see what your score was, to really just kind of think about it yourself. Oh, did I sleep well last night? Did I not sleep well? And then look at the information to see if it's the same or agreeable to what you thought.
Yes, I love that answer. Thank you. That was so good. And before we leave this too far, you had mentioned, not being on devices when and if you do wake up in the middle of the night. And I'm even going to transfer that over into before bed. We had a client ask this question. So, you know how devices nowadays have the blue mode or the sleep mode, so that technically it's supposed to be better before bedtime. Do you still feel like, even if you're wearing blue blockers or even if your device has that, we still should not be on a device? Go into that.
Well, that's a really good question. And I think sleep scientists actually disagree whether or not electronic devices make a huge difference on sleep quality at night. So there are people who really do believe that it can impact sleep quality. And there's been a lot of research to back this up, although the research is very biased towards unrealistic environments. So it's in a laboratory, you're in a dim room, like a dark room. They haven't had much light during the day. And so then you put a device a couple inches from their eyes, and of course it's going to make an impact on sleep quality. And other people, if you're, let's say you get out, let's say you're outside a lot during the day, the impact of the light from the electronic devices at night is not going to make that big of a difference. So if you have a lot of light history
Yeah.
throughout the day, the devices at night aren't going to impact you that much. Now, that's when we're talking strictly about light. There are other elements to the devices, such as the content that you're looking at, that
Yes.
could make a difference with how you're feeling. So if I'm scrolling the news right before bedtime, probably not a good idea. And it's gonna impact my sleep quality at night. So the best piece of advice would be to put it away an hour before bedtime. Take some time to unwind before bed, take a warm bath or shower, get ready for the next day, pick out your clothes, make the kids lunches, um, do some relaxing activities, stretching, reading a paper book. And another thing you could add into your pre-sleep routine is to write a to-do list. So there's been some research to show that writing a to-do list versus just journaling about your day, there's something about offloading those thoughts that really help you sleep better at night. So that's a good thing to add into your pre-sleep routine as well.
I love that. And I agree with that 100%. Can we talk melatonin for a second? What are your thoughts? I feel like adult, but also you do hear a lot of people use it for their kids.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I've actually, full disclosure, so I'm on the scientific advisory board for a nutrition company that is developing a chewable sleep product. And so I've done a lot of research into supplements and what, has some efficacy.
Yeah.
And melatonin can be useful. Now, primarily it's useful for, let's say, teens or people who are more night owl. And I do want to specify, I'm a PhD, I'm not a medical doctor, but so shifting rhythms to an earlier time, and even in preparation for jet lag as well, and for our night owls who are extreme night owls, having melatonin can help shift your circadian rhythms to an earlier time. And it
Hmm.
doesn't, it can be actually 0.5 milligrams, which is more of a physiological dose of
Yeah.
melatonin. So 0.5 milligrams is about what your body should naturally produce. And there's been some research to show that even just 0.5 milligrams is effective in those who are trying to shift their rhythms to an earlier time. When it comes to insomnia, helping people fall asleep quicker, there's just better treatment options out there. So I wouldn't use it primarily in someone who's really struggling to fall asleep unless that is related to them being a night owl.
Right.
Um, but and you have to be careful of the brand that you're getting as well. So there was a study showing that 80% of what's out there over the counter is not truthful to what it's saying is on the bottle. So there's
Oh,
only
wow.
there's only a small percent of companies out there that are, a good brand. One brand that I like is Natural Factors, which we use with our Canadian Olympic team athletes, that's been tested for purity, etc. So that's a brand that people can check out. So yeah, you have to be careful of what you're actually getting. And then moving on towards other supplements as well. So magnesium, a lot of us are magnesium deficient. And so magnesium helps calm our mind, and magnesium glycinate in particular is kind of the route I would recommend, because there's different types of magnesium blends.
Yeah. Yeah.
But glycinate on its own has been shown to be good for overall sleep quality. So that's something people could look into, as well as magnesium. And then tart cherry juice actually has been shown to naturally produce more melatonin as well. So those are kind of the three main ingredients. So melatonin itself, magnesium, tart cherry juice is another one that people could look into. And then there's been some preliminary work in kiwi fruit, which is interesting.
Yes.
So I think it might have been one or two kiwi fruits about an hour before bedtime helped people with insomnia.
Oh,
I'm
so
not,
interesting.
yeah, I'm not quite sure the underlying mechanism with that, but there's some things people can try. Um, but if you are really struggling with your sleep, let's say there's kind of a rule for insomnia, a rule of three. So if you are falling, if it's taking you longer than 30 minutes to fall asleep, or if you're waking up three times during the night, and this is happening three times a week
Yeah.
for 3 weeks, you want to definitely get help from a sleep professional, or there are different online programs that use cognitive behavioral therapy for insomnia, so CBTI, for people to check out, because you don't want to, just kind of keep going on sleeping poorly. Because the longer you go, the harder it's going to take to treat it. So definitely try and get help from a sleep professional if you are really struggling with your sleep.
Okay, and I will put those places to go search out with the CBD in the show notes, because I do think that that's so important. And you can tell when individuals have struggled with it so long, they've almost like succumbed to, this is just me, I'm just not a good sleeper. And so to hear you say, hey, there's professionals out there that like can coach you through this is really hopeful. Do you do any of that? Do you do any one-on-one coaching?
I don't. I mean, I do consults for like elite athletes and business professionals, et cetera. So if it's more trying to optimize your sleep, I could help in that arena. But more of the sleep disorders, this is something I'm very passionate about, and I think in my current role as director of clinical sleep science at Cerebra, we are working on ways to better help people with sleep disorders, in particular, people with sleep apnea. So, CPAP, continuous positive airway pressure, is kind of the treatment plan for that. But we're really looking into more individualized treatments. Are there certain phenotypes that may benefit from a certain treatment? And as it relates to insomnia, same thing. Are there certain kind of baseline characteristics that this person may benefit from stimulus control therapy or intensive sleep retraining? Like, we really want to individualize treatment for people with sleep disorders. So I'm really passionate about that. But I could definitely make recommendations for different programs that I'd recommend.
Okay, I would love that. And then we'll put that in the show notes. You are fabulous. I appreciate you so much. And you're working today, so I want to get you back to your actual job. Can you give us your elevator spiel though, of like this is basically summarizing all your quick things that if you got somebody for 20 seconds, what would you shout out to them?
Well, one thing we didn't talk about was light exposure. I mean, we talked a little bit about the light history throughout the
Yeah.
day, but I think this is important for people to understand that light outside is so much brighter than our indoor lighting. And just to give you an example, I measured my light levels in my office and I'm at 100 lux, which is not good at all. I have just one little window, I'm in the basement. So that's part of the issue. And then I went outside on a cloudy day and it was actually 14,000 lux. So 140 times brighter outside. So getting outside, especially in the morning, has been shown. I mean, it helps set our circadian rhythms for the day, and it actually leads to better sleep quality at night. So that is an important tip that I don't think a lot of people realize, is to try and get outside, go for a walk, try and get outside for at least 20 minutes. And even on a cloudy day, especially hopefully in the morning, you can get that in. But if your schedule doesn't permit, just getting outside at any time of day is going to help improve overall sleep quality. So that's an important tip for people to figure out. We talked about the importance of pre-sleep routine. So that's absolutely important. Put away those electronics, add in some of those relaxing activities before bedtime. exercise. I'm adjunct assistant professor of kinesiology at University of Calgary. So exercise is a huge one. And, in my work, we found that it helps with mood disturbances, but it also helps improve sleep quality. And I mean, maybe
Oh,
this isn't the
yeah.
right audience for that, because I bet a lot of your listeners exercise, but that's really, really important. The timing may be important as well. So, um, if you're exercising late at night, it's
Yeah.
going to shift your rhythms to a later time. So it may not be conducive to your schedule to schedule exercise late at night. You may want to shift that a little bit earlier. So exercise in the morning has been shown to shift your rhythms to an earlier time. So depending on when you want to wake up, exercise timing may be important at helping regulate your circadian rhythms. Napping, we talked about that. So don't be ashamed to schedule in a nap, during the day. Actually, workers who nap are more productive than those who don't. Watching that caffeine intake. We didn't talk about alcohol, but we know alcohol can help us fall asleep quicker, but as it's being metabolized, it actually wakes us up more during the middle of the night. So drinking more, maybe a drink with dinner would be more advisable versus drinking, after you put the kids to bed, for example.
When you really want
Uh,
it. When the me time hits.
so
Yes.
I give you full permission to drink at lunchtime versus right before bedtime.
Right.
Those are some of the keys, and I think I am working on a website, so sleepwelltowin.com. I'm gonna probably have that up within a month or so. So I'm hoping to post some interesting blog posts on
Oh,
different
yeah.
different topics as it relates to sleep. So you can check me out there. I know that was more than 20 seconds,
Oh
but
my gosh, it was, I'm telling you, you're fabulous. And I could talk to you for like 4 hours, which brings me to the point of when your website's up and running, maybe come back on, if you will, and we can just remind everyone that the resources out there. And I still have more
yes,
questions for you for another time.
for sure. Yes, let's
But
do it again.
yay. Oh, thank you. And yes, we'll see you hopefully in a couple months.
Okay, thanks for having me.
All right. Thanks, Dr. Bender.